Good morning and welcome to Edgewater Ranzel's webinar series. Today's webinar offers details of a client's success with the implementation of Oracle Hyperion Profitability and Cost Management, and it is hosted by Matthew Rigney from Premier Global Services and Dan O'Toole from Edgewater Ranzel. Our webinar series targets specific customer interests related to business analytics solutions that include Oracle Hyperion Enterprise Performance Management, Business Intelligence, and Big Data. We'd like you to email us at seminars@ranzel.com with any topics that you'd like to see covered. During the presentation, we encourage you to submit questions in the right-hand panel on your screen, and we will do our best to respond at the end of the presentation. Edgewater Ranzel is a full-service Oracle Platinum Consulting partner that delivers innovative solutions to clients that solve an array of business problems and maximize the effectiveness of their strategic, operational, and financial management processes. We remain connected to the design and development of new and changing Oracle products and technology and consistently apply and update leading practice methodologies that address changing business requirements and take advantage of evolving system capabilities. Our worldwide team of over 200 employees has years of industry-specific experience, certifications on various Hyperion applications, and includes Oracle ACEs, who are recognized experts in their subject area. Services we provide support all facets of Oracle Enterprise Performance Management, Business Intelligence, and Big Data Solution Delivery, including consolidation and reporting with the Financial Close Suite, Enterprise Planning, Profitability and Cost Management, and Business Intelligence Applications and Technology. And we offer supporting services for infrastructure, data services and integration, training and support services, and project management. For additional details about Edgewater Ranzel, visit our website, www.ranzel.com. Edgewater Ranzel celebrates 20 years this year as a leading business analytics service provider and was recently recognized by CIO Review magazine as one of the 100 most promising big data solution providers. Ranzel also recently received the 2016 Partner Achievement Award for Outstanding Success in the category of Big Data. For the third year in a row, Edgewater Ranzel has been recognized by the Commonwealth Institute and More Research as the 5th largest woman-led business in Florida and is ranked in the top 10 for each of the last 5 years. Finally, Edgewater Ranzel's acquisition of Chicago-based Branchbird, an Oracle Gold partner that specializes in big data and data discovery technologies and solutions, has facilitated Ranzel's expansion into emerging Oracle big data space and has helped Branchbird to rapidly expand their offerings. Today's presenters are Matthew Rigney and Dan O'Toole. Matthew is the VP of Financial Systems for Premier Global Services, where he is responsible for establishing the global enterprise performance management process. Matt has been with PGI for over 7 years, where he continues to be responsible for the global implementation of the Oracle Hyperion EPM suite and has been working with the Oracle Hyperion product suite for over 15 years. Dan is an EPM consultant at Edgewater Ranzel with over 14 years of professional experience in areas of corporate finance, accounting, financial reporting, and financial systems. Over the last 5 years, he has focused primarily on Hyperion products, including Hyperion Profitability and Cost Management, Hyperion Planning, and SmartView. Dan works with customers to implement Hyperion applications and reporting tools, gain understanding of customers' business needs and technology, and develop project plans to drive project success. And I will turn it over to Matthew now. Matt?
Hello, thank you. So what we're going to go over today here on the agenda is basically, he just went over the introduction, so we've got that done. Some of the business background on why we implemented HPCM here at PGI, what our approach was for that implementation, and then go over, the solution, kind of how we architected it, what we did there. Dan's going to go over that. And then what our results were and any closing and Q&A. So that's kind of our overview today. So about Premier Global Services, we were founded in 1991. We're headquartered here in Atlanta, Georgia. Here in Atlanta. We have about 2,000 employees, 50,000 enterprise customers, 75% of the Fortune 500, and we're a pretty global presence here. So all over. And then we've done a bunch of meetings, so had a bunch of people on a bunch of meetings. We deliver a lot of webcasts, so any IR calls, any conference calls, a lot of those things. And we have users from over 155 countries. So go to the next slide. Business analysis. Why did we do this? What is it? For us, the business analysis, it was really a deep dive into our business. We get, GL data, which basically gives us a P&L, those type things, but then we also have customer and billing data. So what we wanted to do is take that customer and billing data, combine that with our GL data, and look at, a deep dive to figure out what customers are really driving our business, what ones are helping driving margin and our, which ones are, could use some work, let's put it that way. And so basically we combined it and we were able to look at detail based on customer, product, and channel data. So, why do we do it? Provides better understanding what's driving our business, highlights specific issues for certain customers which may be using a product in a way it was not intended. So we've seen that. And then, ability to show our P&L in multiple views. So being able to do a management view, because a lot of times our legal view, especially here at PGI, is no longer kind of the way we're managing the business. Looking at product view, channel, and customer. So that's what we were doing, and what we try to do here, we try to do it. So we can go to the next slide. The challenges and issues. So we mainly try to do this at first. And, we were just using Excel. We basically had a GL database. We had a customer type database, an S-based cube. Try to pull all those together. So it was, using workbooks, it took a lot of manual intervention, and it took a lot of time to publish. Initially, it was taking us a month or 2 months, basically, to put this business analysis together to get it out. Everything was at a summarized level, so there wasn't a lot of granularity. You could get down to a certain level, but then to get any further, it took a lot more work to go there if people asked questions about the data. We had multiple maintenance points, so on those things, just formulas in Excel to linking to everything else. Just it was we always found errors in it every time we went and did it. And then the allocations method and drivers were based on whatever we could do in Excel. So trying to do multi-step type allocations and other things was just a lot harder in Excel. And our management structure no longer aligned with our legal structure again, so that's where we needed kind of a management view of the world. And with a management view, kind of as I had discussed before, more timely. It was taking us a month or 2 months, so we were only doing it once or twice a year to update that. So being able to go back and do this on a more timely basis. We had multiple methods used to allocate profitability. So one thing we would do is we would ask our, we have, our North America region, and then we would ask our international region to give us the same type of metrics. Well, they would use a different methodology. They would come up with it. You were looking at customers. They were like, hey, that has negative margin. And, we were like, well, that can't be possible. So there's a lot of back and forth. And it was just that they were using a different methodology and trying to get everything to tie back. Just, sometimes there was so much detail it didn't work. So, and then trying to understand certain dimensions of our business. So we've had some new products. So iMeet and Global Meet, some of our newer web products. And then we've had our existing audio products, or op-assisted, or our legacy audio. And trying to understand some of the profitability and what's driving those, because a lot of times we were taking like client services and using some of those employees to support the new products. So trying to break out that cost, just try, as you use existing employees to support these new products was, so just trying to show the profitability of that using, and understand our business. So, all right. So what was our opportunity? So, really was to implement a standard approach for product, channel, and customer profitability and allocations across the region. I mean, that was one of the big things we wanted to do. So that way, again, it was audible. You could sit there and an executive can ask a question, and then you can say, this is the way it's done, and this is the way it's done across all regions, and feel good about it, right? And transparency across the allocation process. Ability to quickly make changes based on management. You know, we all like to restructure and reorg all the time and look at our different business in different ways. So be able to do that and run different scenarios on what the org would look like or what your P&L for the certain management layers would look like in a new org. We were able to reduce, well, I think later I go, but we wanted to reduce the time it took to produce this a business analysis from, like I said, 1 to 2 months to days. So after we're done with our actuals and their book, being able to run that and then basically be able to get out, here's your forecast at a high level, but then here's all our management P&Ls within a couple days of being done with closing the books. Reduced error rates, so no hard-coded Excel formulas, being able to audit what's happened, make sure everything is allocated properly. So, you know, one of the things we did have before was where we would run these reports, and then you'd look at that report, and then you'd go look at one of our actuals or forecast report, and they wouldn't tie. So, I mean, they weren't off by a lot, $1,000, $100,000, but at the end of the day, if, you know, an executive looked at this report, had a revenue number, and on, you know, these reports that we did, the business analysis may have slightly different number. So it was just making sure we could tie all those together. Like I talked about a minute ago, track profitability for new products, being able to allocate the, you know, any cost, any shared cost to these products, and produce management P&Ls on a quarterly. And actually now we're down to a monthly basis. So can update that to basically where we're running this monthly, so instead of annually. All right.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Matt. So I'm going to kind of walk through the implementation approach. What happened with this is, you know, PGI kind of brought to Ranzel, hey, here's our issues, what can we do to fix that? And we came back and said, hey, we have this, you know, there's this great Oracle product, HPCM, that you can use to help with allocation, the allocation process. It'll help with a lot of these issues you're seeing. You can get, you know, standardization. You can trace back and see how things are getting allocated. You can make sure drivers are loaded and they're consistent across regions. So we went in and we knew we were going to use the HPCM application to assist PGI with this. Now, with the HPCM application, there's actually 3 different models you can use. There's the management ledger, which we used out here in PGI. There's a standard model, and there's a detailed model. When we went out there, we knew we wouldn't use the detailed model. That's really used for microcosting. So it was really a toss-up between the standard model and the management ledger model. And with this, there's pros and cons to both. Ultimately, what came out of it, based on all the design discussions with the team out at PGI, was we were going to use the management ledger approach. And I'll get into how the management ledger approach works a couple slides down the road. But ultimately, at a high level, there's 4 simple steps. What you're doing with management ledger is you're kind of defining a rule by naming it. You're going to pull in, hey, define what is my source dollar amount with that rule. Where's the target of that dollar amount? Where do I want it to be sent to? And then the 4th and final one is the driver. How do that driver that's loaded, how do I want it to allocate the cost to the target section? So that's really the main high level how management ledger works. The other great thing out when we were doing this implementation is PGI was already a Hyperion customer, so we were able to leverage existing hierarchies and data sources, so that helped with the implementation approach. Second bullet point here, as Matt mentioned, when we got out there, we learned the big thing that they needed fully allocated management P&L. So they needed to take their costs from the GL, allocate those to product, to channel, and to customer as well. And throughout the design doc, we learned how we would, throughout the design work that we did with them, we learned how we would step by step throw the allocations through that process. And then the next slide or 2, I'll get through details of that. We set up a 3-phased approach out there. So phase 1 was really the big one. So that's where we went out and we did a normal project where you do, you know, design, build, test, and then get it into production. So that took us about 3.5 months. With that, you know, we took data from their existing planning and data warehouse investments, as well as just making sure for phase 1 we only worked with the North America core business only. And the big thing with management ledger, that 3.5 months, we're seeing about 30 to 40% reduction in implementation time with this new management ledger approach to HPCM. So after the phase 1 was complete, this summer we went back and did phase 2. This is where we really expanded on the business units or the geography. So we added to only having North America. We brought in international and acquisitions as well, so we could get the full P&L available through the HPCM applications. And currently is working to add budget and forecast to the HPCM model as well. So this, you can bring those in, and then you can compare your budget and forecast, product, channel, customer allocations to your actual to give you more insight into what's going on with the business. And with phase 3, they're also they're fully automating the loads coming into HPCM. We had a couple manual ones that were coming in throughout the process. They're working on fully automating those. So that's really the implementation approach we took out there. This next slide here, slide 12, it's really a typical project, HPCM project team when we pull it together for a Ranzel HPCM project. Now, all this obviously depends on the size of the project, the size of the client, how big is the company we're going to work with. Obviously, we didn't have this many people when we were out at PGI, but this gives you a high level of what the project looks like. So on the Ranzel side, you always kind of have the executive team. You'll have an account manager, and really who's working on the project is you'll have a solution architect, and if need be, a PM/business analyst. And these roles are interchangeable depending on the project and the size of the company, as I mentioned. But the big thing is on the Ranzel side, you're going to have an HPCM lead who's in charge of the delivery, also a data integration person. Those could be the same people depending on the size. There's going to be an infrastructure part of that, as well as, if needed, in the lower right, we've got training, prep, and delivery if it's needed on the project. On the client side, if it's a large organization and change management is needed, that's something we always include when we pull the project team together, saying, just to make sure we can talk to all the stakeholders and get them up to speed on change that's coming. As well as on the client, we'll have HPCM power users, model developers. You'll have a FIS team, get your financial systems in order, and then you'll have some pieces from IS. So you'll have your BI developers if that's needed, app integration, as well as any feature management that you'll need on that side from the client. So like I said, this looks like a lot of people, but this is really a typical project team, and depending on the size of the project as well as the size of an organization, we will change this as needed. So slide 13, this is where we wanted to get in a little more details of what did the allocation flow look like out at PGI. So we kind of put this quick document together. So when we went out there, what we start with is the GL. So that's kind of the top row here. And what we're pulling in there is the account and department. That's really where we're starting with from the GL side. And from talking through the design doc, through the design sessions with PGI, with the business leaders, we learned that really the first step out at PGI was to take that GL data and get it into P&L line items. So that's really what that line item box is. We learned that was the first step. Let's take the GL and get it into the P&L line items, because those are really the buckets, or they could be called cost pools. Those are really the cost pools that you're going to start with, is those P&L line items. So once we got that loaded, then we took those line items and they had to get allocated down to product. As you can see here, the arrow points down to product. And we had a driver over here on the right. The drivers are in the green. The drivers from going from line item down to product were manual drivers. So those were drivers that were supplied by the business. They would upload those through SmartView, and those could be pulled into HPCM to do the line item to product allocation. Out at PGI, a lot of those were time study manual drivers that were loaded. At other clients I've seen, you could have headcount, salary dollars. Those are some other manual drivers that could be loaded into HPCM. Once we got the cost down to product, then we had to get it down to channel and customer, which is the next box down there. Most allocations we did to channel and customer at the same time. but there was a couple allocations that went to channel and then customer, so the rules had to be tweaked based on that. But the drivers, the HPCM drivers that were loaded for that section there were some manual drivers, but there was a lot of customer data. That's really the SLS Rev drivers. That's customer data getting pulled into HPCM from the data warehouse. And a lot of the customer drivers could be call volumes, call minutes, number of calls. That's how we allocated those costs between channel and customer. And then ultimately, when we got down to channel and customer, there was one product type called the automated product that we needed to do one further allocation down to toll type, and we did that by that same customer data from the sales rev database, where we used the call volume minutes or number of calls to allocate down to the automated product, down to toll type for automated product. So that was really the data flow out at PGI. So why management ledger? As I mentioned before, lower implementation costs. We're seeing with management ledger 30 to 40% reduction in implementation time as compared to the standard model, and these kind of list out the reasons for that. So with the standard model, there's a relational staging area that you have to pull up on the back end so that you can load some drivers in a specific fashion for the HPCM standard model to consume. Those are not needed with management ledger, so you save time there. Second bullet point here is you're eliminating really the additional design time needed for a rigid stage configuration. So with the standard model of HPCM, you have to set up a stage configuration, and it's very rigid how the costs have to walk from one stage to the other. So doing that during the design phase, you're going to have to make sure all your design documents are pulling in everything needed to make sure that that is accounted for correctly. With management ledger, you have more of a free form of how your allocations flow. There's not this stage configuration you have to sign that you have to stay with, so you can eliminate that from it. Third bullet point here is a lot of the dimensions you can use. You can just pull straight business dimensions with management ledger since it's such a free flow allocation tool. With the stage design, a lot of times you have to either combine some dimensions or tweak some business dimensions to make sure that they'll fit within the stage configuration. So we didn't have to do that with management ledger out at PGI. Another big thing is lowering training costs. The tool, the HPCM management ledger tool, is very easy to use for accounting, finance groups, people to go in and look at the rules screen. As I mentioned before, there's a rules screen for source, target, driver selections. It's very intuitive and easy to use. Also, when you're setting up the rules in HPCM, you're also setting up a sequence of rules. So you can set up the sequence of, I want this group of rules to run first, this group of rules to run second. Sometimes you want a group of rules to run at the same time to make the calculation time quicker. All this is set up by a finance person on the front end, and it's very easy to do with the management ledger application. Next bullet point down here, you're lowering your support costs. If you're not tweaking your current business dimensions, then you're saving on having to maintain those new business dimensions. You're using the same business dimensions the business has used throughout time, so there's no new maintenance needed there. Also, with the free-form modeling, any changes in existing allocations methods, a business user can go in and make those changes throughout the forms, throughout the source, target, driver screens that I was talking about. A business person can go in there. Since it's free form and it's not very rigid like the stage modeling we have with the standard model. And the third bullet point here under the lower support cost, it's kind of the same thing. If there's any change in logic, you're able to do that. You can also do what-if scenarios. So a business user could easily go in, copy a current actual scenario, call it a what-if scenario, tweak a couple drivers, run the allocation process, and see how does the output change if I want to change a driver. If I want to change a driver from headcount to salary dollars, how does that change how costs are allocated down to product, channel, and customer? And the final bullet point down here with management ledger, there's a reduction in calculation time, cycle time. There's only one cube. There's an ASO cube that's used with management ledger. On the standard type of HPCM, you actually have two separate cubes. You have one VSO cube that does the calculations, and then it needs to send all its results to the ASO cube for reporting. Whereas Management Ledger, you just have one single cube that for the cycle time. Next slide here, just further going into the Management Ledger, and I've talked about this a couple times, but this kind of gives a real-life example. So, as I mentioned, there's 4 easy steps with Management Ledger. You can see in the middle panel there, there's define the rules, there's select your source, select your destination or target, and then select your driver. And over on the right here, we kind of went through an example. So if, let's say, for this, we're going to define a rule for facilities expense allocation. So we're going to take our facility expense cost and allocate it out to the rest of the business. That's really what our rule is going to be. Our source is going to be the facilities cost. So I'll go into the system. I would go into HPCM and define, hey, here is my source. Here are the facilities costs. I would also go into my next screen of HPCM, and I would pick the target or destination. And ultimately, in this example, we're going to take the facilities costs, and we're going to allocate it to all departments of the organization. So that would be what we would put in the destination screen. And the final screen here would be the driver screen. So in the driver screen, we would go pick how do I want to send the cost from the source facility cost to the departments. And here we use the example of square feet. So we would have a driver loaded to be square footage by department, and that's how the cost would get allocated out to all departments throughout the organization. So this is really the 4 easy steps, the high level of how Management Ledger works. And as I mentioned, you can configure your model for different rules. What's the order? How do you want to sequence your rules? And is there any rules that you want to run at the same time to save on calculation time? So that's really high level why Management Ledger. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt.
Thank you, Dan. All right. So basically, this was kind of just a graph on how our prior state was, kind of our data flows. So if you see on the left-hand side there, we have PeopleSoft, which is our GL. We pull all the actuals into our GL plan, which is a planning database, block storage database. We also had ADP, which is pulled all our employee information into Workforce. We take those and, we put in our budget and forecast into those, and we produce what we call the HOB reports, which the HOB reports is, like I said, our actuals. It's our health of business. So each month we produce those. And then we would also take, on the right-hand side there, our billing files, so stuff coming out of our billing system. We pull that actually into a SQL data mart, and then that pulls into our revenue database, which is ASO database, using Essbase Studio. And from there, what we would do before is those BA reports, or that business analysis reports, would basically just be pulling certain sheets out of our GL database, certain stuff out of our revenue data mart, doing manual allocations, just saying here's the minutes, here's the revenue, those type things, trying to allocate those costs in Excel, and then producing those business analysis reports. Again, they, from a total level, total revenue should match on both the HOB reports and the business analysis reports, and pulling those things in. So that was kind of our way to do it before, and you see that basically to do the business analysis was just pulling from 2 data marts and being able to produce those reports. So it wasn't that easy to maintain as new dimensions or new customers were added, those type things. So then our current state, what we did was we basically used the HPCM Management Ledger as kind of that consolidation point. So now at the bottom there, we got that SQL data mart. So we pull in our drivers. Our drivers are things such as minutes, number of meetings, by customer, for product. So those would be all your kind of drivers that you pull in. Revenue for some cases where we don't have minutes or number of meetings. Then we also have on that right-hand side, should say GL on that block over there, but we pull in all our OPEX pulls and our revenue costs. So basically that's pulling in all your revenue by product that's booked to the GL. It also pulls in all your costs, so all your client services costs, all your network costs, everything else. We pull into our Management Ledger. Then part of that, so we have what our manual drivers, so certain drivers such as third-party margins and stuff like that, where we actually have to go and look at the invoice that we're getting from some of our third-party vendors to figure out margins for certain products. Those get loaded in. And then we also have manual attribution. So these are the two places here. And also manual drivers are those time studies that we do. So where we go and talk to our client services department and say, what percentage of your time are you spending on specific products? So then we would allocate those to those specific products and then allocate that to the customers that use those products. Manual attributions there are certain departments and certain costs that go in certain areas that we know are specific to a specific customer. So that allows us to basically take that cost and directly, attribute it to a specific customer. So if you knew $100,000 out of this department went to that customer, we could basically take that $100,000 and push it to that customer and then allocate the rest that was left over and the residual that was in that department. So that's what we do there. So we pull all that into the management ledger, run all our allocations, and then we basically pull out our business analysis book, which we have there. We have some FR reports as well. And then you can see the dotted line there. One thing we did do in this ledger, instead of billing, all our customers, all 50,000 customers, was actually just pull in the top 500, since those are a large majority of our business and the ones that are really going to affect your profitability. So eventually what we plan on doing in a future phase will be to take all those allocation results out of there, push them back into our SQL data mart, which then will push those costs out to every single customer, and then we can load that back into our sales revenue database that has all the customers in it and be able to run that. So you can see every single customer. I'm not sure if it's going to be beneficial for us. Those customers get pretty small, so we're still debating whether that's even going to be useful for us. We have a hard time digesting the top 500, much less going out to 50,000. So then the other part is allocating all the allocation results by product back to the GL. So having some of that product P&L back in the GL so we can pull it from there. So that would be the other phase, would just to be to push those back to the GL. So from one spot we could pull all of our kind of management ledger, our product P&L from there, and not use, and so that way we have some actual and forecast plus the product P&L in that one database. So that's kind of our current state plus a little bit of our future state there. And I think, oh yeah, so implementation results. So what did we achieve here? Basically now we have a global HPCM solution, so that supports the capture of all our driver and revenue and cost information. It did give us that standardization we were looking for across the region. So, we've kind of put a presentation together that we've gone out to our, what we call our PLMs, our product line managers now, and gone over and are going over how all of that works with them to make sure they understand it. And basically we've, improved the efficiency and timeliness. So now we're basically every month loading it in once the actuals and forecasts are done. Being able to load that in and run it in a couple days. That's something we're trying to work on to get even faster and to automate completely, because we want to give that back over to the end users, so us as kind of the financial systems team don't have to run that. Whenever they're done with actuals, we want them to be able to push a button basically and let everything come in from actuals, run all the allocations through. They can check the results. Like Dan said, there's still some training we need to do to get them to go into the system to be able to make the changes themselves if they want to change the way allocations work. So there's still some training to do there, which we've been running. But it's one of those things, I think, as you got to walk before you run. We're starting to do those things and starting to push more of that to them. Creating more meaningful data, more, new allocations. So being able to allocate stuff and have the multi-step allocations and push it further down into product, where before we had pushed it kind of into the high-level product, and now being able to push that even further down to the individual products within those groups. So that has helped. And the flexibility of doing what-if scenarios, so to be able to react to management changes. So we're starting to do some of that now, where we're starting to look at the allocations and starting to change a few things on how we initially set it up and seeing if that makes sense. And so that's stuff as we meet with these PLMs, you know, and they have questions, we can kind of run through different scenarios and see what they think are the you know, appropriate way to allocate certain costs or those type things, and we can go model that and say, okay, here's how it would affect all product owners and those type things. So what are our next phases? So currently we're working on the addition of forecast and budget. There, one of the issues that you have is that you don't really have actuals for customers and channels and product. So how to allocate those costs, whether you use the actual cost based on last quarter and allocate those. We're actually starting to load some of our top 25 customers into there and then kind of have an all other bucket. So we're trying to load some of that stuff from a forecast perspective and the budget's perspective, and then load that actually into HPCM and allocate that. So, but you know, modeling a customer at each product with the drivers that we need is not that easy. You know, for 25, not, you know, much less 500. So it's a little more summary level than what we have for our actuals, but it, you know, at least it gives us that forecast and budget at that point. Addition of CapEx, so looking at cash flow, looking at cash spend for some of these products. We spend a lot more on CapEx than we do others, so looking at that. Full automation of the process, again, we just talked about that, having the end users be able to run the whole thing. And then transfer pricing, so some of the tax-related stuff that we may pull in there as well. So those are kind of our next phases and what we're working on today. So that's it for me.
Did we have any questions, Joey?
Yeah, I do have a question here. How long does it typically take to run all of the allocations for a given time period?
So that can actually, a lot of that depends on the size of your model, how many dimensions you have in your model. But I believe out at PGI, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were out there for the original North America run, I think it was taken maybe 30 minutes for a full year allocation run. How's it looking now when you guys are doing monthly runs?
Yeah, so it's taking a little longer, and that's something that we're trying to look at now. So, I mean, we're up to 5 or 6 hours, but that's fully loaded with a couple years in it with every business unit, everything else. So, in part, one of the things we have there, talking about the full automation, is, and something you want to think about is, you know, you go run a rule, and it's kind of like S-Base. You wait for it to stop, then you go run the next rule, depending on what you're running there in the allocation. So, trying to automate that, because for us to get a true timing, it's not that, you know, we run it, we forget about it, we go do other stuff, we come back, we see it's finished for a while, then we go run the next one. So that's where, for us, trying to fully automate that so it runs all the rules, since we have different, like acquisitions have their own allocation methodology, the core has its own allocation methodology, so different business units have different allocations that have to run. So being able to put all that together and to run that kind of in sequence is what we're working on today.
Okay, perfect. But that's a lot better than the months it took you last time to pull that stuff. So
yeah, I mean, if we can kick it off on, you know, at night and then we get in the morning and it's done, I'm fine with it. You know, it's, you know, again, this is where actuals come in. We finish that, we work on the book for the HOB, and then we go back and kind of do this management PL, you know, product view as well. So, you know, pick and run, and I get it, you know, that's something that, you know, like our hardware is six years old here, our S-Base server 6.7, so, you know, it's not that we're on the newest hardware and everything else, so it's, to us, it's pretty good.
Perfect, thanks. Any other questions, Joey?
Yeah, another question here. If there are changes in allocation methodology, is this an IT task or a business user task?
With HPCM, and that's really why Oracle built HPCM, is they built these to be a business user task. So if you have, you know, allocation changes they want to do, and Matt kind of brought it up, it's really the business users that goes into HPCM, go into the the front-facing screen, and you can go ahead and tweak those allocations, change a driver file, change a target of where you want costs to go. It's meant to be only the business user going and doing that, and not waiting on, if you have separate databases that IT runs, that you have to contact IT, say we want to tweak an allocation method, tell them how you want it tweaked, and then they need to go develop it. It's all user-facing front-end stuff with Oracle's HPCM to make it a lot quicker and easier for the business user.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the one thing that, from our implementation and stuff like that, we kind of took that on as ourselves, and then we'll work on pushing that out. The one caveat there is that if it is a new driver, and let's say I wanted some type of hours from our time system, then you might have to figure out how to get those drivers into the system, and which may require some IT type stuff. But if the drivers already exist and you're just changing it and changing, what departments it goes to, whatever else, really, it's copying the data, copying, what you can do in the tool, copying the point of view, and then just changing your driver, changing your source or destination. So that's pretty easy to do. And then, if it is new drivers or something like that, that's where, you probably have to get a little bit of help trying to get, hours by employee in or whatever else. So.
Okay, well, to our audience, if there are any more questions that come up after the webinar, you may submit them to us at seminars@ranzel.com or info@ranzel.com, and we would gladly respond to you via email. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website shortly, where you may also find a number of previous webinars posted. And our webinars cover a range of topics, so we encourage you to visit our website to view upcoming webinars that you might find valuable. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and thank you to both Dan and Matt for sharing your knowledge and expertise during this presentation. If you guys have nothing else to add, then we can wrap up this webinar. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, bye-bye.